All right, so I think for once I'm actually gonna make a long form video about the Hawk Tuah girl now. So here's the thing, this is just my honest opinion. I really do not care too much for these influencers that pop out of nowhere. I really got nothing against them. Some people find success really fast. Some people never find success in this realm. Other people accuse others of being quote unquote industry plants. And you know what? I do think that that's an interesting take because sometimes it's weird how some of these people just spawn out of nowhere with, one clip and then it turns into a whole brand seemingly overnight with podcasts with all this really expensive equipment. Like someone already had money invested in this and it just grows because it gets all this exposure. So let's just say I can neither prove or disprove whether these people's launches into fame are pre-planned or anything like that. We could go down as many rabbit holes as we want. But, whenever someone wanted to make, content complaining about how she got famous so fast, I was like, look, it is what it is. My journey's my journey, and it doesn't really have much to do with my journey in life. So, you know what? Wish her well, all that stuff. That was my attitude, and I didn't even want to make videos because it felt like everybody was making a video on this person and like how it rose up. We're at the point where like you were watching the same video over and over and over again. And sometimes that's a thing about a lot of these influencers is it's eventually, in my opinion, they're always making the same thing. They're not jumping from topic to topic. It's always just like the same kind of key things. Like, we've had Andrew Tate come up and now like if you've seen one of his videos, you've seen all of it. Make as much money, get a Bugatti. Now, it might work for some people, and if it works for you, then, all power to you. But me personally, when I watch, a show and it becomes the same thing over and over and over again, it's like The Walking Dead almost. Like season after season, we're watching the same rhythm. Eventually, you have to kind of like, come up with something new. And that's why I like to watch guys like Brendan Buckingham is because, he actually does a really good job of giving like the same, not the same stuff. And he's like mixing it up and he's actually doing different forms of content, which is really cool. But where am I going with this? We're going to segue into the main point. A lot of these big time influencers that spring up out of nowhere, whether they're like the Andrew Tates and they're always getting taken to court and always being hunted down by the law because they have the hidden knowledge that no one wants you to know. Or it's the Hawk Tuah girl who came out of nowhere and everyone's like, how are we making people like this famous when they're scientists actively trying to fight disease who don't get any notoriety? Like, we really try to act like a lot of people are oblivious to the obvious truth, but I think a lot more people can see it than we'd like to admit because I think a lot of people, like the silent majority, like really kind of just don't, call it out because they kind of realize that no matter how much they talk about it or try to bring up the point, no one's really going to listen, and the people who follow these influencers are going to follow the influencers regardless. But back on the whole, where's the rhyme and all this? There's always some crypto token coming up. And then also one of my actual favorite, YouTubers also who does do the same content, but he does it with a reason and calls a lot of these projects that end up being rug pull scams out. Like CoffeeZilla, he has always gone after these big time influencers and they always have these crypto scams. Logan Paul had one, Dylan Dennis had one. Now it's the Hawk Tuah girl who has one. And then in comes CoffeeZilla to call out the obvious truth, and then they all start, talking about, he's defaming us, right? When, the people forget the legal definition of defamation is, like reckless slander, where like if there's something to go by or there's something to back it up, it's not really defamation. It's just like really speculation at that point. They get deflective and like defensive and they don't want to answer any of the questions directly or sincerely. And the reason I'm making this video is because I literally just watched that CoffeeZilla video on Voidzilla where he was talking about how it went. And honestly, the person when he was talking about how like, a lot of the people in these crypto spaces are mentally ill anyway, it's like they just like literally insulted their target audience as a last result because they were probably backed into too much of a corner. But the thing is where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this is obviously we do have this whole internet culture that is basically, like at least a section of internet culture. Because I'm not saying the internet's all bad. There's still a lot of cool knowledge and stuff that you could look up on the internet that's very valuable. There's a lot of, YouTubers and content creators that make entertaining content and actually use their content to fight what they consider evil. But there's a whole section of the internet that is riddled with these big time influencers, that like pop up out of nowhere and become these mainstream, like idols for everybody. And then they always kind of end up rearing their heads around, and then they end up getting in like a similar controversy like they're doing right here. And honestly, I didn't know that this was happening. I didn't even know that the coin came out until it actually did. I didn't even realize, because like I said, I don't watch that podcast. I don't get involved with those things. I, have things going on in my real life that I'm working towards. So I really don't give myself the time to sit down and enjoy too many podcasts anymore is where I'm going. I'm sorry to sound like I got a grind, bro. I got a grind, bro. Do you have a grind, bro? No, I'm just saying, I can't sit there and consume a Tuah podcast. If it's popular with everybody, then okay, I mean, enjoy. But we should have seen enough instances of this crypto scam to know that this was coming. I'm not saying what they did was right, because I really honestly think that what they did was wrong, but we see it so many times that how do we still continue to get investors on this is my question. How do people still take the bait with these crypto coins? And that's why I don't really do crypto, is because you never know when something like this is going to happen. And it's like something that my parents always used to tell me when I was a kid. And, I used to think that they were just being negative, but then I realized that there's truth to it. When something seems too good to be true, it's because it probably is. And then you realize it's like 99% of advertising. I mean, it didn't happen with this podcast culture. It's been going on for a long time, where they stretch the truth, make these commercials of like, oh, when you eat Skittles, you're actually tasting the rainbow, when we could obviously tell that's not really true. And crypto's a kind of a new thing, so comparing crypto to Skittles is a little odd. But when someone with a podcast that's based off of Tuah is their main thing, and then they say, hey, we got this coin, you're going to make a bunch of money. And then the second it goes the way everybody kind of saw it coming, if you're familiar with these things, they start saying you're the problem. I think we're starting to figure out like what these podcasters are all about eventually. And, the sad part is some of these podcasts are actually fun to watch. I just said I don't have a whole lot of time to, but, if you see like clips or in times when I used to watch podcasts, like from before these times, like when it was like near like the 2019 eras and stuff like that, a lot of those are very entertaining. A lot of those, I could see why people will sit down and relax and listen to those while they're playing Call of Duty and whatnot. But I think it's really sad that it always devolves into, let's just launch some sort of, crypto thing that's going to make us a bunch of money and lose a bunch of people a ton of money, even though we're making a lot of money from our podcasts and our brand deals and all that stuff. And I think that's the thing, is greed always swallows these influencers whole, and it eventually comes back to bite. Because, you know what, I don't know, everyone online is saying, oh, she's going to get prosecuted, she's going to get lawyers involved, she's going to go to jail. Look, I don't even think that's going to happen, because the other part of these continuous stories of these influencers launching these crypto things is none of them really ever face consequences as much as it seems like they're going to. Now, this could change this time. I don't know. I'm not begging for her downfall. I really am not. I'm just saying my hopes for actual justice in this realm do not have like high hopes. Like, I don't have high hopes that anyone's going to be held accountable, because I've never really seen it. They usually just, make a huge unhinged tweet that's like 3 paragraphs long, and then they ride off into the sunset, and then they go back to doing podcasts, pretend like it never happens, and people continue to go watch this stuff. People forget about it, and then they move on to the next thing. It sounds very cynical, but this is just the way I've seen it go time and time again. So, yeah, I don't know if justice is going to happen, if you could even define justice. And I think there's always going to be a fresh brand of people who don't know any better that are always going to be exploited by people like this. And, look, I understand when I was younger, I used to get exploited by a few things because I just didn't know any better and I didn't know the nature of the world. And I'm not saying that people who buy into this are, bad people or anything like that. But the one thing that you got to understand is when someone tries to sell something up or pump it up or oversell it, that's a red flag to me for reasons like this, no matter what it is, whether it's in the crypto space or whatnot. Even if you're buying used cars and the guy's really trying to sell the car hard and he's dodging questions, an honest salesman is always going to be transparent. But we could also understand is that there's going to be sincere people, and then there's going to be people like this that are just always going to have something behind their back, ready to go. That's, very shady. And, I don't think those people are going to change anytime soon because, like I said, I'm going to get a little cynical again. Why should they? Do they ever face consequences? No. And you know what? It just kind of seems like it's never enough for them. Like they have a podcast that generates millions of dollars and it never kind of seems like that's enough. Like, oh, you have one successful podcast that's going to set you up for life versus your average worker who's going to have to work day after day, live paycheck to paycheck and work for a living. And then it's just never going to be enough. Bring on the crypto scams, bring on all that stuff. And I'm pretty sure that everyone's thinking this isn't the most nuanced opinion, I'm guessing. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody has this complaint. But I think we got to learn that, this is the nature of these big time influencers that pop out of nowhere, or the quote unquote industry plants, a lot of people like to call them. And sometimes the only way to win is to not invest your time and energy off there. And I know I'm just making a video, so I'm investing time and energy into this, but I'm only doing this to try to warn people that, yeah, this is kind of the nature of how it goes. And it's this clown show like this that always goes in circles. It's actually a clown carousel. It just continues to go around in the same direction. We start at point A and then go all the way around, and then here we are in circles. And sometimes the best way is just to not invest in those things, not pay too much attention to it, not really try all that stuff that these people try because it sounds too good to be true. And like I said, when something's too good to be true, it probably is. But I'm actually going to land the plane right here. I just wanted to make a quick video on this to try to, tell people that, hey, this is the way it is. It's messed up. The world was not right when I entered it. It's not going to be right when I leave it. But all I can do is navigate it, and hopefully I can share my voice and reach a couple hundred people. And maybe if someone wasn't already thinking this, maybe I could help them out too. So thank you for listening to some small YouTuber talk about crypto scams for a little bit and his honest thoughts. But I'll see you guys later. Peace out.